The friendship betrayal storyline is a pretty powerful one that can inflict a lot of emotional pain on both the main character and the audience. The question is then, how does one write a friendship betrayal storyline to be so painful? How can one write this betrayal so that the audiences are shocked, hurt, and feel that they themselves were betrayed by these characters? This is the question that I intend to answer by analyzing and comparing two different betrayal storylines. The first is one that I think is the most brilliant and painful betrayal story, and the second is somewhat of a failure. The friendship betrayal storyline is all over the place in cinema. The first Mission Impossible movie, Iron Man, Loki, and Thor, you get the idea. Betrayal is everywhere. However, I don't think I've seen a friendship to betrayal storyline as compelling and painful as the one between Caesar and Koba in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I watched this movie for the first time in 2024, and after seeing it, was so amazed at how well written Koba's betrayal was. After contemplating it and watching the movie once again, I was convinced that this was quite possibly the best betrayal storyline ever created in cinema. A pretty bold statement, I know.
Look, I don't know if he's brave or stupid.
But why? What made the storyline work so well? Why was it so shocking and painful to see this betrayal unfold? How does one write betrayal? To figure this out, let's look at this movie and figure out what components are necessary to write a compelling and painful betrayal storyline. After breaking it down and identifying what is required for a betrayal story, I want to compare the Caesar and Koba story to another betrayal storyline. And this is where some people might get upset.
Don't be rash.
The one that I want to compare it to, the failure, is that of Obi-Wan and Anakin's story. A betrayal story which I think just didn't work very well and was never very compelling or painful in my opinion. And for more reasons than just the dialogue of the prequels.
Your new empire? Don't make me kill you.
There was something wrong with this betrayal storyline, structurally speaking. So it's time to analyze it further and figure out why it never really worked for me. And what about it could have been changed to make it more painful. And I'm not really here to make enemies by saying that I didn't like the Anakin Obi-Wan betrayal storyline or the prequels. But maybe I am. And I'm ready to fight you on this one.
I will fight you.
Nope.
But first, an analysis of Caesar and Koba. What components in the Planet of the Apes story allowed this betrayal to be so painful? Requirement number one is just a solid setup of these two characters' friendships and their loyalty to one another. After watching the first Planet of the Apes movie, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, you knew Koba was definitely going to be a villain in the future. I expected the second movie to start out with Caesar and Koba already in conflict with one another. Perhaps Koba had his own little following and was threatening Caesar's reign. What I was not expecting was for the apes to be living peacefully and for Koba to be friends with Caesar. Not only were they friends, Koba showed immense loyalty and respect to Caesar. Let's just real quick look at the intro scene of the movie and see how much it accomplishes in setting up this friendship. Right at the beginning, we see Koba is in Caesar's hunting party and is taking orders from Caesar. We see that when Caesar gets in trouble and the bear is there, Koba is the first one to the scene to protect Caesar and does not hesitate to save him. Right after this terrifying scene, Caesar and Koba laugh together, kind of bringing the tension of that really stressful thing that just happened. And this shows the audience that these two are really close and are really good friends. Not only is Koba really loyal to Caesar and will protect him, but they're good friends. Later on in the beginning of this movie, we see that along with Koba being really loyal to Caesar, we see how much Caesar trusts Koba. And we see this when the apes run into the humans for the very first time. When the apes run into the humans for the very first time in this movie, Koba is selected by Caesar to follow them and to scout out what's happening. So the very beginning of this movie does a lot to show us this friendship and these characters' loyalty to each other. We see that Koba respects Caesar as a leader and Caesar trusts Koba. So that is requirement number one. You need to have, at the very beginning of the story, a really solid setup of this friendship and show how much these characters trust each other and how loyal they are to each other. You can't just say that they're good friends, you need to show it and convince the audience that these two are really close. Requirement number two is establishing a clear conflict between these characters early into the movie. The audience needs to have a clear understanding as to why these characters, these friends, eventually become opponents. Okay, so establishing the conflict. Back at their home, the apes are discussing the humans and what they should do about them. And this is the first sign of conflict that we see between Koba and Caesar. Koba wants to attack the humans right away. But Caesar wants to take a different path and hopefully establish peace between the two peoples. Koba continues to insist on his plan, but is quieted when Caesar stares him down. Koba falls silent, reinforcing the idea that he respects Caesar as his leader. In this scene, when Caesar leaves the council, Koba goes up to talk to Caesar alone. Rather than having a huge public fight between him and Caesar, he respects Caesar and he knows Caesar will respect him and what he's thinking, so he goes to have a private conversation with him about it. The conflict between these two is introduced, however the scene showed that Koba still trusted Caesar as a leader. It also established that Caesar had no fear regarding Koba, even though he disagreed with Caesar. While there was conflict established, they still trusted each other and were still friends. And that brings me to requirement number 3. Along with establishing a clear conflict early on in the movie, this conflict needs to gradually escalate throughout the movie. After the humans come back, Caesar allows them to do the work that they need to. Koba is clearly against this. From this decision, the conflict between the two is escalated and Koba goes to talk to Caesar once again. However, this time, rather than a quiet conversation like they had before, Koba starts shouting at Caesar after hearing the phrase, "human work." Caesar once again has to silence Koba. Because Koba decided to have this little confrontation with Caesar and it was a bit more public than the last one, Koba realizes his mistake and he asks for forgiveness from Caesar, which Caesar gives. Here we see that the conflict has escalated a little bit. Then later at the dam where the humans are doing their work to restore power, we see that the conflict is once again escalated further. Caesar goes with the humans to watch them as they work to restore the power. Koba does not go with Caesar even though he expected him to. Instead, Koba and a couple of other apes go to scout out the human camp, still not trusting them. Koba may still trust Caesar, but he does not trust the humans. After finding that the humans had all these guns, Koba plans to warn Caesar about them, still trusting that he will do what is best for the apes. Or at least what Koba thinks is best for the apes. The conflict is then escalated for a third time after Koba returns. Koba returns to see that the apes are no longer just watching, but they are actively helping the humans. Seeing this, it angers him quite a bit. While before he was asking calmly where Caesar was, he is now yelling and demanding to see Caesar. Koba publicly questions Caesar and challenges his decisions and actions as the leader. The gauntlet has been thrown and Caesar has to take action to ensure that he is still seen as the stronger leader. He attacks Koba, ending his attack by stating that apes do not kill apes. Koba once again requests forgiveness and Caesar reaches out to give it, but Koba turns away before it's given. Once again, this scene is a significant escalation of the previous scene where Koba and Caesar last talked. They disagree, Koba comes to talk to Caesar, Caesar is challenged by Koba. Caesar needs to once again establish his place as the leader. In each of these 3 scenes, those same steps were taken, but they were escalated every time. The conflict between them escalates significantly until there is ultimately a physical altercation between the two friends. After this scene, watching it the first time, I wasn't really sure where things stood between Koba and Caesar. Obviously, they had gotten into a big fight, but was Koba actually mad enough to turn on him completely? I wasn't really sure, but obviously he did. Caesar was betrayed, and that brings me to requirement number 4. The audience and the protagonist are betrayed at the same time. After the fight scene at the dam, I wasn't sure what to expect from Koba. He didn't tell Caesar about the guns. He then went to Caesar's son and told him that he feared for Caesar's life. At this point, watching it the first time, I wasn't sure if the audience was supposed to know if Koba was evil. If we were, I guess I didn't get the memo, because I was still in my mind like, oh man, I hope he's not evil, or I hope he's not going to betray Caesar, because my first time watching it, I wasn't sure if he actually was going to be a bad guy. So, in hindsight, obviously, but I was hopeful still the first time, holding out hope that he wasn't gonna betray Caesar. All those hopes were quickly dashed to pieces, however, in one of the most insane movie scenes I've seen in a while. They did an excellent job making the scene so shocking. Even if you knew Koba was evil at this point, I believe that this scene would have still been a surprise to you. This scene is done so well for a number of reasons. Number 1, Koba and Caesar's friendship had been established so strongly in the first half of the movie. Number 2, the two really trusted one another. Number 3, even when Caesar looks down and sees Koba, you can see he doesn't suspect anything malicious from his friend, up until the moment that Koba aims and shoots at him. And number 4, the calmness of Koba. His act of betrayal could have been very flashy and full of rage. Instead, it was very deliberate, conniving, and calm. Another thing that made this so effective, at least from my experience, they made Koba one of my favorite characters for the first third of the movie. As I mentioned before, I thought that Koba would just start out as a threat to Caesar, and they really threw me through a loop with Koba and Caesar being friends at the beginning. And I was so excited about it. The fact that they took my expectations of Koba being the villain and turned it into me really hoping that he would remain friends with Caesar was kind of crazy. They did such a good job establishing their friendship and getting the audience to care that even though it was pretty clear that Koba would be a villain, you really didn't want him to be one. When they did turn him into a villain, they also did a really good job with that. There are a few reasons why I think that Koba was such a good villain in this story, including requirement number 5, the traitor's motivations make sense. There are so many movie villains I can think of whose motivations just don't make a lot of sense or aren't very compelling. Thanos, Eli Mills in Jurassic World 2, Kaya in Kung Fu Panda 3, Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man, David Cross in Ant-Man. Koba's motivation for turning against Caesar has a lot of background and makes sense for his character. The humans did pose a threat to the apes, and Koba already had a history with them that made him trusting them almost impossible. From his bad experience with the humans, Koba felt betrayed by Caesar when he started to help them. From Caesar's actions in helping and trusting the humans, Koba saw his friend and leader turn weak. All of this information about Koba is given to the audience very clearly throughout the story. His motivations are known to us and make sense. And that is a crucial component for creating a good betrayal storyline. The audience needs to understand why this person turned traitor and believe that they would have done so. And I'm not saying that what he did was justified, I'm just saying it makes sense. You see where he's coming from. If instead they didn't use Koba in this story and instead they just kind of introduced a new ape whose motivation and background weren't explained, it would just be weird. If they hadn't shown us why Koba and Caesar disagreed and created that background for Koba, the betrayal would have been more confusing than painful. Because Koba had this background, his betrayal made sense, even though we didn't want it to happen. Requirement number 6, the story largely focuses on these two characters. One thing that is probably obvious, but I think needs to be stated, is that in order for the betrayal to be effective, the audience needs to spend lots of time with these two characters. Their friendship should be a major focus in the story, not just something that is quickly established at the beginning, forgotten about, and then brought back up again at the very end when the traitor makes himself known. In order for the betrayal to be painful, we need to see these two characters as friends, see them work together, and become invested in their relationship. We need to root for them so that we really don't want their friendship to fall apart. The betrayal doesn't work if the audience doesn't get to see these two characters as friends, and it also doesn't work if the audience doesn't have time to become invested in this friendship. We need to see the friendship and we need to see a lot of it. Don't just say, trust me, they're really good friends. Show it and make it an integral part of the story. So now that we've analyzed that story and established the 6 key requirements to writing a betrayal, let's take a look at the Star Wars prequels and see if that friendship betrayal storyline meets these requirements. Side note, as I was working on this video, I looked up on Reddit and articles that list really good friendship betrayal storylines in movies. A lot of people were listing Anakin and Obi-Wan's as a really good one. But you know what was never listed? Caesar and Koba's. That's just not right.
It's just not right!
And I know what you might be thinking, because I am psychic.
Physics!
You're probably thinking that I didn't find this betrayal so compelling and shocking because I knew that Anakin was going to betray Obi-Wan and become Darth Vader. But no, I think a really good betrayal storyline will be painful every single time you watch it, even if you know what's coming. I watched Dawn of the Planet of the Apes twice, and both times it was incredibly painful. Yeah, the shock factor wasn't there because second time I knew he was going to betray him, but it was still incredibly painful. If the audience doesn't feel that it was a very painful thing to watch every time they see it, it wasn't a very good betrayal storyline. Anyway, in each trilogy, the two friends don't interact with each other very much in the first movie. The two characters are both seen in the first, and their backgrounds are established and shown to be very different. The friendship between these two characters is then established in the second installment. Neither friendship gets any screen time in the first movie. And by the second, there is a time jump and the two are already established to be friends. The audience does not get to see the development of either friendship, so the movie needs to do a good job convincing the audience that these two established a strong friendship off screen. Does Attack of the Clones accomplish this? Let's look at the very first interaction we see from these two characters, which is this elevator scene.
You seem a little on edge. Not at all. I haven't felt you this tense since we fell into that nest of gundogs.
You fell into that nightmare, Master, and I rescued you, remember?
Oh, yes. You're sweating. Relax. Take a deep breath.
I haven't seen her in 10 years, Master.
Ah, good. The very classic tell don't show method. Very cool.
Very cool.
This very first scene is definitely not as good as the Planet of the Apes first scene. In the Planet of the Apes one, they show us a life-threatening situation that the two friends go through. In this one, they talk about a life-threatening experience that they had, and then the conversation just quickly becomes about Padme. But maybe this was just a very bad very first scene. So let's go on to the next scene with them and see if it's any better.
We're here to protect you, Senator, not to start an investigation.
We will find out who's trying to kill you, Padme. I promise you.
We will not exceed our mandate, my young Padawan learner.
I meant it in the interest of protecting her, Master, of course.
We will not go through this exercise again, Anakin. And you will pay attention to my lead.
Why?
What?
Are you convinced that they're really good friends yet? That scene was not a very good introduction of their friendship. These first couple of scenes are not doing a good job convincing me that these two have a really strong friendship. Instead, it's just convincing me that they don't really like each other's company, they don't really have much respect for one another, but maybe it gets better later on in another scene?
I forgot you don't like flying.
Don't mind flying, but what you're doing is suicide. Well, you've lost him.
I'm deeply sorry, Master.
That was some shortcut, Anakin. He went completely the other way. Once again, you've proved
If you'll excuse me.
Okay, maybe not. This movie failed to show that these two were actually good friends. They constantly stated that they were close, Anakin saying that Obi-Wan was like a father to him, but they didn't show us any of that. Whenever these characters were on screen together, all they did was argue. And it wasn't friendly debating and friendly bickering. It felt very bitter and antagonistic from both sides. They did not feel like friends. Obi-Wan seemed tired and annoyed with Anakin. He acted like Anakin was an unwanted burden that he had to deal with. And Anakin seemed angry and spiteful towards Obi-Wan. He hated how Obi-Wan treated him and disrespected him as a teacher.
It's all Obi-Wan's fault. He's jealous. He's holding me back.
And the same is true throughout the next movie, Revenge of the Sith. We are told that they are close and we're meant to believe that they are good friends, but these two characters do not show any of that brotherly or fatherly love that we are supposed to buy. Just looking back at the introduction scene that we have of Koba and Caesar, that did a lot to show that these two characters were really close and they really trusted each other and they were good friends. And then you just have this elevator scene with Obi-Wan and Anakin where they're just talking about Padme and then they're just bickering the whole time. Are they friends? Are they really? So requirement number 1 for these two characters is an absolute fail. But how about requirement number 2? Establishing the conflict early on. Is there a believable conflict established? Yes, there was. Just like in the Planet of the Apes movie, this prequel trilogy shows that these two characters have very different backgrounds and life experiences. Obi-Wan grew up in the Jedi Order and has extreme loyalty to this religion. Anakin grew up a slave and was raised by his mom. His upbringing, things that he loves and knows are contrary to the Jedi Order. He does not have that same agreement and loyalty to the Jedi that Obi-Wan does. That is a pretty good setup for how these two characters differ and how their paths could one day diverge. In Attack of the Clones, we see that Anakin is having a tough time in the Order and following the Jedi Code, and Obi-Wan is trying to keep him on track. We see that these two are already on opposite sides due to the no attachment rule. So yeah, requirement number 1 is actually done pretty well. We see that these two characters, while not enemies at this point, have some disagreements that could eventually lead to bigger problems. But what about number 3, the gradual escalation of this established conflict? Are you kidding me? They didn't follow that requirement at all. If Caesar and Koba's conflict were graphed, it would look kind of like either a gradual escalation like this or just kind of like a stair-steppy thing where it's escalated each time you see them. And then you have Obi-Wan and Anakin's conflict where it's just kind of like it's all over the place. They're constantly bickering and fighting, and it seems like Anakin could have turned on him at any point in these movies. It's kind of like Anakin hates Obi-Wan, oh, but he's friends with him. Oh, but Anakin hates him, but oh, he's like a father to him, but oh, he hates him again. Like, it's all over the place. Rather than just first establishing that Anakin has problems with the Order and the Jedi Code, and then slowly showing his concerns become bigger and bigger, they just kind of have his concerns be very loud and constant. No gradual incline as we see how these issues further unravel him. They just kind of have already made him an unstable character to begin with. Throughout the movie, we are told these two are close and friendly towards each other, but we are always shown the exact opposite. So requirement number 3, no, they failed miserably on that one. Okay, but how about requirement number 4? Having the audience and the protagonist be betrayed. Well, not necessarily the protagonist at this point, I guess, just the one that's being betrayed. Having the audience and the one that's being betrayed be betrayed at the same time. Do they do that? No, they don't. Anakin's turn to the dark side and him betraying all of the Jedi are done when Obi-Wan is completely out of the picture at this point, at this moment. He joins with Palpatine and then he starts helping with Order 66 right away. And so his moment of betrayal that the audience sees, we see it when Obi-Wan is completely oblivious to all of it. So the audience is betrayed when Obi-Wan is off doing whatever Obi-Wan's doing at this point. Then Obi-Wan comes back and he sees a little hologram recording of the betrayal. And so at that moment, when we see that Obi-Wan is just now realizing of this betrayal, we've already seen it. We already know it. So we're not feeling the same things that he's feeling at this moment because we've already been there as an audience. For me, I think it would have been a lot more painful if we were seeing this as Obi-Wan was seeing it, if we were following the story from his perspective and we saw Anakin's betrayal through Obi-Wan's eyes. That would have been way more painful in my opinion. And they didn't do that. We just see that Obi-Wan sees it from this recording. Why? Why did they do that? So requirement number 4, Requirement number 5, do the villain's motivations make sense? Yes, I guess they did lay some groundwork to explain why Anakin betrays the Jedi and explain why he goes down this path. So I guess you could say it makes sense. For me personally, basically the entire prequel series didn't make much sense to me. Especially this one part where it's like Anakin has turned to the dark side to save Padme, and then all of a sudden he's killing Padme?
No!
Let her go, Anakin.
What?
What?
So, I don't know. Like, yes, yes, sure. We'll give it to them. Maybe I'll give them a 50% on that one. They tried to make it make sense, and I think I get what they were trying to go with here, and I think I get why Anakin's doing this. But then they kind of throw it out the window with this whole, he's doing this to save Padme, and then he's killing Padme. Like, it doesn't make sense. So, number 5, maybe? Kind of? No? I don't know. What's going on in the prequel trilogy, guys? Okay, and then lastly, requirement number 6. Does the story largely focus on these two characters and their friendship? Again, total failure. No, it did not. These two characters are split up off doing their own things for the majority of these movies. In Attack of the Clones, Obi-Wan goes to do some investigating and detective work on the clones and Jango Fett, and then Anakin is sent off to an island with Padme for a good part of the movie. And then same thing in the Revenge of the Sith. They're split up again for a large part of the movie. And then again, the ultimate betrayal scene where we see Anakin turn against the Jedi. Obi-Wan's not even there. Number 1, you need to show us that these two are friends. Number 2, you need to have their friendship be a huge focus and have these characters be interacting for a majority of the movies and of the story. So again, total failure. What were they doing with this story and these characters and this trilogy? It's really bad. They kind of just throw in lines here and there from Anakin about how they're so close and Obi-Wan is like a brother or Obi-Wan is like a father to me.
He's your friend, your mentor.
He's like my father.
They have these lines all over the place, but do they show it? Do they focus on it? No. And so there you have it. Those are the main reasons why I think that Obi-Wan and Anakin's friendship betrayal storyline failed so miserably and just was not as compelling and painful as it could have been. They could have made it really good. Sure, it could have been a really painful betrayal storyline, but instead, it's really dumb. So, mystery solved. I've often wondered why I never felt like this betrayal storyline worked, and after watching and analyzing Dawn of the Planet of the Apes betrayal storyline, I think I figured it out. I think I figured out all the problems of this storyline. Yay, go me. And so that's it. That's it for this video. Those are the requirements I think are needed for a good betrayal storyline. I think that Koba and Caesar's storyline was, quite honestly, the best betrayal storyline I've ever seen. And I love those movies. And I'm not embarrassed about it.
And he's not embarrassed by that.
I'm not, okay? And yeah, that's it. So let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I've said. Let me know if you are a super fan of the prequels and think that I was just dead wrong about all the problems that I had with Anakin and Obi-Wan's story. Yeah, let me know.